This is a national debt clock. It's been in New York since the late 80s, and it shows the gross national debt that we as a nation owe countries, companies, and people that lent us money, almost exclusively in the form of bonds. Back in 1989, it was just shy of $3 trillion. Today, it's north of $30 trillion. And if you look at it by household, there's a reality check, more than $300,000 owed per household. Many worry that a confluence of factors is going to send the U.S. into a debt spiral.
It's 2031, and something strange is happening in America. Social Security checks have stopped cold. Federal agencies like health, education, and the military aren't paying their workers. Most were laid off. The dollar has collapsed, wiping out trillions in savings. The stock market is in free fall. Police departments are broke and crime explodes. The country that once led the world is now fighting just to hold itself together. Is this just a distant nightmare or a very real possibility? With our national debt zooming past $36 trillion with no slowdown in sight, is America destined to go broke? What if I told you we're a lot closer to that possibility than most people realize? Today, people talk about our national debt like it's a ticking time bomb. You hear it everywhere, on the news, in political debates, even on social media. It feels like everyone agrees the debt is a problem. They just can't agree on what to do about it. But we've been here before. It's New York City, February 1987. You take a walk down 43rd Street and see this massive electronic billboard freshly installed on the side of a skyscraper. It claims America is $3 trillion in debt. The billboard was installed by a concerned real estate magnate who couldn't ignore the national debt spiraling out of control. Starting in the 1980s, America's deficits started to balloon. The Reagan administration came in with a bold plan: cut taxes, crank up military spending, and avoid major cuts to entitlement programs like Social Security and Medicare. It was the era of supply-side economics, or what critics called trickle-down economics. The belief was simple: cut taxes and the economic growth would be so massive that it would pay for itself. Spoiler, it didn't. Instead, the 1980s became a decade of excess. Wall Street boomed, corporate profits soared, but so did government borrowing. The debt pile grew because every year the government spent more than it brought in. How did we pay for these annual deficits? We borrowed. Essentially, we put it on a credit card to pay it off later. And who were we borrowing from? Everyone and anyone. Other nations, individuals, retirees, investment banks, our friends, our enemies. We give them an IOU, a bond, a promise to pay them tomorrow or next year or even 30 years from now if they lend us today. But here's the thing. Despite all that debt, the sky didn't fall. America didn't go broke. In fact, something remarkable happened. A brand new thing called the internet showed up. Suddenly, the US economy got supercharged. Productivity soared, new industries popped up overnight, and companies like Microsoft, Amazon, and Google became global giants. At the same time, the Cold War ended, and the so-called peace dividend allowed the US to shrink defense spending. And for once, shockingly, politicians from both sides worked together. President Bill Clinton and Speaker Newt Gingrich cut deals, reformed welfare, and even raised some taxes. The result? By the late 1990s, America was running a budget surplus. Yeah, you heard that right. A surplus. In 2000, the US government actually ended the year $236 billion in the black. The debt clock slowed. For a brief moment, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we'd figured it out. And from that moment on, America kept running surpluses. Things were so good we paid off the entire debt, built bullet trains, gave everyone free healthcare, universal pre-K, heck, we even sent free Teslas to every household. The stock market soared, inequality disappeared, and Washington worked together in perfect harmony. Yeah, that's not exactly how things went down, is it? The 2000s brought back heavy deficits with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, coupled with the Bush administration's major tax cuts. Then in 2008, the global financial crisis brought the world to its knees, and the government had to spend like there's no tomorrow. It bailed out banks, propped up the economy, and tried to kickstart a recovery. The Obama administration also maintained large deficits throughout the 2010s, as it implemented stimulus measures, extended tax cuts, and expanded social programs like the Affordable Care Act. At the same time, slow economic growth and lingering effects of the recession meant that tax revenues weren't keeping pace with spending. Though the deficit shrank from its post-crisis peak, the national debt continued climbing, so by 2016, the national debt had ballooned to almost $20 trillion. Then 2017 Trump tax cuts would widen the deficit further. Then came 2020, the COVID pandemic hits, and the government starts mailing out stimulus checks left and right, bailing out business and corporations and borrowing like there's no tomorrow. This trend continued into the Biden administration, with significant legislative actions like the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act. Which brings us to today. These days, you'll hear politicians, Trump and Musk, talking about cutting the deficit with DOGE. But here's the reality. The House Budget Resolution cuts spending by $2 trillion, but also cuts taxes by $4.5 trillion. So, in effect, 2 minus 4.5, yeah, our deficit next year is going up by $2.5 trillion. We're going to borrow even more money. So, what can be done today? Well, my friend, it's time for a game. Your job is to balance the budget. Let's take a look at our menu. Here are America's top sources of income. Income taxes. Payroll taxes, that's Social Security and Medicare, corporate taxes, excise taxes like gas and alcohol, small other sources, fees, tariffs. And here's where we spend the most: Social Security, retiree payments, Medicare and Medicaid, healthcare for seniors and low-income folks, defense, military, weapons, bases, interest on the debt, paying back our IOUs. Everything else, education, roads, science, housing. All right, your move. Want to raise taxes? Well, most Americans already feel like they're paying plenty. A wealth tax? Good luck. Billionaires have armies of lawyers, and trying to tax volatile assets like stocks is a nightmare anyway. Okay, what about cutting spending? Sure, start with Social Security. But the moment you touch that, you'll have millions of angry retirees, aka voters, storming the Capitol. Cut Medicare? Same problem, but with wheelchairs and oxygen tanks. Slash defense? Well, the Pentagon won't love that, and neither will the companies building billion-dollar fighter jets. The truth is, there's no real political appetite to fix this. One side won't raise taxes, the other won't touch Social Security or Medicare. And even if they wanted to, America is aging fast. In the next 2 decades, millions of baby boomers will retire. That means more people collecting Social Security and Medicare benefits, fewer people paying taxes, and an even bigger strain on the system. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, and no one's hitting the brakes. So, back to our original question. Will America go broke? The answer is yes and no. And I promise this isn't a cop-out. Yes, America will go broke, at least in the way a family goes broke. There's no realistic path out of this without fundamentally changing the social contract we've made with ourselves about aging, retirement, and what it means to grow old in this country. We've promised seniors decades of government-backed income and healthcare, but the math just doesn't work anymore. But also, no, America won't go broke, because technically, a country that prints its own money, like the US with the dollar, can't go bankrupt the way you or I can. Uncle Sam can always fire up the money printer and pay off what it owes. The catch? Doing that floods the economy with cash, weakens the dollar, and causes inflation. So, sure, we may not default, but life will feel like we did. Your savings will buy less, prices will soar. It'll be a silent default, but a default all the same. Okay, but hold on a second. America is a superpower. We're the undisputed most powerful nation on Earth. Surely we'll never really go broke? Well, my friend, history tells us otherwise. Consider Spain in the 16th century. It controlled a vast empire, had endless gold and silver flowing in from the New World, and yet it spent far more than they earned, fought too many wars, and relied on easy money instead, and ended up going bankrupt and eventually lost its empire. Or consider Britain after World War II, a global empire, a military powerhouse. The war left them financially drained, and within a few decades, they went from ruling a quarter of the world to needing an IMF bailout in 1976. The truth is, every major currency in history, from the Roman denarius to the British pound as the world's reserve currency, has eventually collapsed, devalued, or been replaced, often because the government borrowed too much and spent beyond its means. But wait a second, this is America, and in America, we always find a way. Just as we fought our way out of the Great Depression, rebuilt after World War II, and, heck, put a man on the moon, we have the ability to tackle this challenge too. So maybe we will figure it out. If anyone can solve a problem this big, it's us. So hit that subscribe button, because in our next video, we're breaking down how America can still fix this before the clock runs out.